Good morning, Year 3, and welcome to this week's maths lessons. This week we're going to be revising measuring and place value. So hopefully it should be revision, but there's lots of activities and questions and a bit of problem solving to do. So let's see how you get on. So all of those who are really smart will recognise what we have down here, which is a place value chart. And if you remember, it goes ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and a 1 is obviously just one number. If you put a number into the tens, those are worth 10. Each number you put in the tens column is worth 10. If you put a number in the hundreds column, each number is worth 100. And if you put a thousand column, each of those numbers or things is worth 1,000. Now, obviously, what we need to remember when we're using a place value grid, and this is revision, so you should know this, is if we multiply something by 10, we move the number from one column just to the next column. So, for example, if we were to put a 7 in the ones column, looking at the maths below, and we multiply it by 10, the 7 makes one leap into the tens column, but we can't just leave it floating there because obviously it still looks like a 7. So we then have to put a 0 in the ones column. So 7 times 10 becomes 70. So it's really important that you remember that for when we do the maths questions. So if we're multiplying by 100, not just 10, we move the 7, there's 2 zeros there, so we need to move the 7 2 jumps, so it goes into the hundreds column. Now, as we say, it can't be left floating, so we have to put a 0 in the tens column and in the ones column. So 7 times 100 equals 700. Therefore, if we were multiplying 7 by 1,000, we've got 3 zeros there, so we have to jump 3 columns and put the 7 into the thousand column and then backfill with zeros, so the answer becomes 7,000. So multiplying by 10 is in effect moving the digit along and putting a 0 next to it. If we're multiplying by 100, it's moving the digit along twice and putting 2 zeros next to it. And if we're multiplying that digit by 1,000, we move it 3 times because there's 3 zeros and put the 3 zeros at the bottom. So it's a really easy way of remembering when you multiply by tens, hundreds and thousands. Now, we all know that the inverse of multiplication is division. So it's just the other way round. So if you had 70 on this place number grid, and we are dividing by 10, we're just moving the 7, we're taking the 0 away, so we're moving the 7 back into the ones column, because 70 divided by 10 equals 7. So all you're doing is you're moving it one space that way, but now you can't have more than one digit in any column, so you've got to just get rid of the 0 and you end up with 7. Similarly, if you had 700, so the 7 in the hundreds column and 2 zeros, if you divide that by 10, you just move it back one column, and then obviously you can't have a 7 and a 0 in the tens column, so you just leave the 7 in and you have to get rid of the 0, and then you have the ones column, so it becomes 70. And similarly, 700 divided by 100, you move it 2 places, the 7 into the ones column, and obviously you don't need any zeros, so 700 divided by 700 divided by 100 equals 7. So that's the logic. You might want to go through that and practice it a few times, multiplying, dividing by numbers by 10, multiplying, dividing numbers by 100. So here's your exercises for today, and they are all about multiplying and dividing by tens, hundreds and thousands. So pause the screen and see if you can do these maths to make sure you've really got multiplication and division by tens and hundreds and thousands. So pause the screen and do these ones now. Welcome back. Now, hopefully you found that really interesting and you managed to get all those right. So here's a little challenge. Now, the symbol in the middle is a divide. So these two, you've got 2 operations to do before you get to your answer. So 15 times 10 divided by 100. So the first thing you do is like a sentence, 15 times 10 is what? Then you divide that number by 100. And the same with part B. 6 divided by 100 times 1,000. What could you do with that one? That's going to be interesting because you're going to go below 1 and back the other way. Or maybe you can do the hundreds and thousands bit first, and then bring the 6 in. Interesting. Let's see how you get on with those two. Anyway, that's your maths lesson for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you managed to get the answers right. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.